In 1960, the very last trade boat on Ireland's canals left for its final journey. It meandered a winding route, stopping at towns to deposit its cargo. That cargo was the thing that grew a small business into the biggest brewery in the world, an object that ruled the ocean and brought its owners immense wealth, status, and power, a thing etched into the identity of a people. It was carrying casks of Guinness. Guinness, started by Arthur Guinness in 1756, moved into Dublin in 1759 at a run-down brewery in St. James's Gate. Guinness began brewing amber ales, then moved on to London porter. Arthur, a savvy businessman, managed to grow a healthy brewery and passed it on to his sons. Arthur Guinness II created the real start of the story. He created a beer to be drank around the world. Guinness West Indies export, brewed with extra hops, was made for the transatlantic journey, becoming a favourite for British and Irish in the colonies of the New World. That beer was the precursor to our modern Guinness. Under his leadership and the leadership of his descendants, Guinness became the biggest brewery in the world. The might of Guinness grew in Dublin thanks in no small part to the Grand Canal. With an entry point right beside St. James's Gate, an extension was built to link the canal to the brewery. Thereby, Guinness could ship its two main sellers. Its West Indies export would leave Dublin and head over to England and then the world, and its porter would go down the canal to the Irish customer. In the early 1800s, most villages and towns had their own breweries. Local brewers and maltsters worked together to create drinks together. Villages with populations in the hundreds even had their own brewers. But with the coming of Guinness on the canal, the economics changed. Guinness, buoyed by profits from London, undercut the prices of local brewers. Breweries in towns beside the canal were hit particularly hard, and grain was sent up the canal, up towards Dublin, where Guinness consumed all it could. There was another byproduct of the canal journeys. The canal men, the ones who worked on the boats, who carried cargo up and down the Grand Canal, suffered greatly at their jobs. One person called it a river to hell. These men would work monotonous 16-hour shifts on 4-mile-per-hour boats, drinking from the casks of porter to endure it. They were in danger as the boat drifting would often crash. Many men lost their lives to these boats, from drowning, being mutilated by the flywheels, or trapped with the ship's pack stove, suffocating in the fumes. Guinness was the biggest customer of the Grand Canal Company. It benefited greatly from these shattered bodies. Guinness now holds a unique place in Irish culture. Analyse Guinness and you find many contrasts. It's an old man drink that's incredibly popular with young people. It's an everyman's pint of plain while having an online culture dedicated to finding its absolute pinnacle. For the Irish diaspora, it's a point of pride, a marker of our storied heritage. It is also a product that brought vast wealth to a family with staunch ties to the British Empire. Is the story we tell others and ourselves about Guinness true? Is it true globally? Historically? Can we discover anything looking at the impact of this drink? Today, the canals are calm. They're places you go to have a lovely walk, or to escape the urban confines of your town or city. A statue of Patrick Kavanagh looks over the Grand Canal, contemplative, inviting us to do the same. It seems like it was always like this, but it wasn't. In truth, the canals were where the industrialization of Ireland seeped into the heart of the country. This is where men slaved for poor wages. This is where Guinness, the first real industrial titan of Ireland, undercut local business and sapped local supplies. This is where people fleeing the famine travelled. This is where the old way of life died. If you look at these calm waters, that murky history can feel so distant. But it is not. Things were not always like this. And we must question how something so new, how something so constructed, appears to us now as so ubiquitous, how it appears so eternal.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that's certainly a very nice bottle of stout.
Guinness. There's nothing in the world like it. Flann O'Brien, a literary hero, said that the pint of plain was your only man. And sure, look, who are we to disagree with the greats?
A pint of plain is your only man.
Us Irish, we've struggled through famine, through rebellions and wars and people from Cavan. We deserve to have something that sedates our minds and soothes to our wounds. And the pint of plain has always been there to do just that. And as an Irishman, now, I think I've noticed something. Sometimes you go into a pub, right? Order a pint. You order a pint of Guinness, right? Sit there like a good little boy, and they'll pour you out a pint of Guinness, and they'll give you that pint of Guinness, and you may drink it, and you may enjoy it, and then, after you finish that pint, you may leave, go to a different place. Now stay with me. Order the very same drink, a Guinness, if I may remind you. Order a Guinness, and taste it, and you may just notice, very subtle, I don't know if anyone else has talked about this, but you may just notice that even though you've ordered Guinness in two separate places, the exact same drink, they might taste a little bit different. I know, it's mad. I don't think you've ever heard of this before. Many people have actually discovered this, and many people have put their time and money and taste buds on the line, chronicling all the Guinnesses in the land. Let us investigate our Guinness. This drink is worthy of investigation. Let's see the story behind this drink, and let's see how it forms part of our identity. And sure, who else is better to guide us through this than the people who love Guinness most? Let's have a look at what they have to say.
Point of plain is your only man.
Okay, so the most popular Guinness presence online is probably Shit London Guinness. It's an Instagram account that has 240 to 50,000 followers at the time of this being recorded. Massive in terms of the fact that it's an Instagram account dedicated to one drink. But my God, the crimes against pint manatee that are on display are ridiculous. Too much head, too little head, just dirty glassware, it's spilled all over the place. There's a fucking milk carton one. It's just some really fucking sad specimens. Looking at this, you actually might understand that if you're not a Guinness drinker yourself, why would people care so much about Guinness? I think if you look at this Instagram page, you can see that these are just poorly made drinks. If you're paying £6 for this, you have been done dirty. There's a pretty objective standard of quality that's not being met here. While the highs of Guinness are very ephemeral and like aesthetically hard to pin down, the lows of Guinness are clear, concrete, and pure fucking shite. Oh, it's still good from a can. It's still good. Who is the person behind Shit London Guinness? Well, that would be Ian Ryan, a Cork man, so he should really be on to his Beamish and Murphy's, but we'll let it slide. This is not the first time he's delved into drinking as a kind of thing to post about. He used to run Humans of the Sesh, which, if you're from Ireland and around my age, you'd know how important that was. Humans of the Sesh was this Facebook page that did memes about the sesh, so going on the fucking lash with your friends, drinking really shit cans, glorifying 12.5 grams of amber leaf, rollies, and just all that crack. So it's still nice. All these jokes and memes were kind of in the early 2010s, and as the page matured, he and another contributor, Brown Sauce, started doing some writing about drinking culture. There's one really lovely one about when you leave your friends at a pub, you decide to walk home after having a few pints, and just that lovely walk home where it's kind of dark and chilly, but you're all warm from the drink, and you see your hometown a little bit differently than before. It's really lovely. Let's go back to Guinness. Ian's behind shit London Guinness, but what if we want to see the good that Guinness has to offer? Well, the sister account to shit London Guinness is Beautiful Pints, and that is some lovely looking pints. But come on, let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper. Well, for that, you need the Guinness Advisor. Now, the Guinness Advisor is another Instagram account, but they have a rating out of 10. Whoa! There you go. So the Guinness Advisor will go to a place, have a couple pints, take a picture of the pint, and then write about it. At the start, it was just sort of like blank place, 3 out of 10, blah, 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 blah. Later on, he starts giving these testimonials almost, or a bit of history about the place and the vibe of the place that's in there. Character is a word that's associated with Guinness, and it's quite hard to pin down. The Gravediggers pub is very famous for having one of the best Guinnesses probably ever in the world. The Guinness Advisor, he gave it a 9 out of 10, the Guinness there. It's the highest rating you ever give. If you got a pint of Guinness in the Gravediggers poured for you, and then you took that glass and then you walked the 15 minutes to go to the, let's say, the Eddie Rockets in Phibsborough and drank it there, it just might be a little bit different. It's very well known that the area in which you're in does affect the Guinness that you're drinking, at least in terms of the aesthetics. We taste with our eyes and we taste with our nose and our tongue, obviously, but the eyes and the ears of where you are, it is important. This is also shown in not just the Guinness Advisor, but the Guinness Guru. Yes, we've moved on. He's a fucking Buddhist now. The Guinness Guru is Dara Curran, and he gives reviews of Guinness and different pints in different locations.
Picture perfect. 1 or 2 tiny little bubbles in the head, but the head is the perfect size, perfect colour.
He used to do Best Pint in Galway or Best Pint in London and stuff like that. He also went to the Gravediggers. He gave it a 9.3, so even more precise than the Guinness Advisor, even more spot on.
9.3. Of course he likes that.
The videos are mainly him drinking a pint, very quickly, I might add.
A good review, and I'm just like I'm literally horsing through that pint. And I'm not an alcoholic, I swear.
Giving his impressions, and because it's a video, you get the sound, you get the vibe of the place. It's a nice little travel vlog.
I'm doing videos drinking pints of Guinness.
That's a tough job.
Very tough job.
Dara isn't doing Guinness Guru stuff anymore. He made an update video saying that he's no longer doing solely Guinness content.
I am bored of Guinness content.
Regardless, hats off to the man for providing Guinness analysis to a wider audience on YouTube. He's been followed up by the Guinnessours, a pair of British lads who are doing the same thing, going around the place, having a couple of pints, chatting about it. It's all a lovely thing.
Yeah, this is it. This is even. Listen to the sound of that. Oh,
dense.
But can I just say that this is kind of mad? Giving a rating out of 10 is something you do to movies or to TV shows. It's kind of weird to do it to beers, and it's very weird to do it to one beer that's just in different locations. What would the point of that be? Well, I think it's to do with our culture. Guinness culture is very important to us Irish people. I think that if you're Irish, you have an opinion about this drink, whether you love it or hate it or even try to ignore it. The fact that you have to try a little bit to ignore Guinness says something about the ubiquity of this pint. I think that this art around Guinness is about trying to kind of legitimize it. You see it in Ian Ryan's work, especially Humans at a Sesh. The writing, as it got more mature, was about giving legitimacy to these times where we fucking destroyed our livers and our lungs, and that is something that's important to us. That was formative years for us, and the way to communicate that is by making memes and by writing about it. And I think the Guinness particularly is something that us Irish people perform, and it's quite an important performance to us. And giving numbers, ratings out of 10, kind of adds an air of legitimacy to that. Sure, it's quantitative at that point. It's almost scientific. I want to investigate this. I want to investigate Guinness culture. I want to investigate the narrative we have around Guinness. It's clearly huge to us, and it's clearly hugely important to Diageo, Guinness's parent company. As I said before, the place in which Guinness is drank is very, very important. For me anyways, and for a lot of people, the best Guinness is in an old man pub. The old man pub that is special to you. These kind of spaces, I think, are worth investigating, because they're kind of the heritage that we're claiming towards when we drink Guinness. It's seen as an old man drink for a reason. Let's bring in the old men. Let's bring in an old man to kind of go through this. And sure, look, I can think of one lad now who would be fairly good for the job, right? I'll just go get him now.
Are you doing a bit of video on? Oh, Jesus. Jesus, no. The bishop. Oh. The slug. Tommy Slug. Now,
I'm not going to do the accent, but Tommy Slug, I think, is a very important video if you're not Irish to understand a bit of Irish culture. This is a video, it's 2 minutes long, and it's about the Slug, played by Chris Tordoff, aka Francis Viper Higgins. The reason why I say this video is important is because it gets the old man down to a fucking T. In just 2 minutes, you understand this character, this real life person who exists in many different forms across the island of Ireland. You get him distilled into his core essence.
We're saying to Johnny there up the bar, I said, they look like they're on holidays now.
We are, yeah.
They're not from around the town, they're not.
No.
The video depicts a couple in a random pub in the back arse of nowhere. They have a baby with them. Tommy Slug comes over. He sidles and he haunts the place. He's a bit like the Banshee in Banshees of Inisherin, or one of those old plays where an old woman would represent Ireland. He haunts the place, and he haunts them. He's confused by technology.
It's an iPhone, is it? Isn't that fucking mighty?
He wants to say hi to the babbo. He doesn't understand that the baby's a girl and not a man.
Oh, what's his name?
She's called Alice.
He's a lovely little man in his Alex.
It ends with him holding the pint like a baby and reminiscing about his son Declan, who left for Australia, and he misses him and he feels alone. Declan's gone off and he's in the same pub.
Not long for the gone, they're off to Australia, and you never really miss your baby until your baby's gone.
He looks up and the couple are gone, along with the baby, and he orders another Guinness.
The fuck did they go? Try to have a pint there, Johnny, and we'll be there, man. You're the man in his Alex there now.
Besides being incredibly quotable and good, the Slug is kind of a character. I was not lying before. He is a real person. He is the old man in the old man pub. The things about the old man pub specifically to Ireland, it'll be dark inside. It'll have a weird smell. There'll be this old tiling, or maybe even carpet, God forbid. They'll have schnugs, little cozy spots where people definitely smoked, and you could see that smoke staining the walls. It's a place where a lot of memories have been made, and a lot of memories are held in the place, and that is something that's worth exploring. Because the old man kind of gets a mix of being a respected figure and a figure of mockery in Irish culture. The old man is in some ways a repository of history that we don't have as much access to.
You have seen a lot of changes, Mr. Fitzpatrick, in farming. What would you say was the biggest change?
Well, machinery.
As young Irish people, we've grown up in a political world that's become more neoliberal, and Ireland itself is picking off bits of American and British neoliberalism and incorporating it into its lovely low-tax country. As Irish people, we feel the need to leave because of crap housing and the financial crisis. So we want to hold on to a bit of identity, and I think it's nice to think of old men as having some of that identity. And it's true, old men do have art that is kind of being lost. The art of lilting, for example, is a pub art and refers back to when sessions would be more common in the pub. They also are repositories of local history. Who lived what, who owned what, where to go, and who stabbed other people in the back. That's information that these old men have, and if it's not written down somewhere, it dies with them, and as every one of those old men die, a little bit of our history goes along with it. I think that drinking Guinness, because Guinness is the old man drink, don't be coming at me with fucking schmiddick. Guinness links you with that heritage. More often than not, drinking Guinness, it makes me picture being in those spaces, in a place surrounded by these memories. It makes me feel fucking Irish. And this Irishness is important to Diageo, and it's something that Ian Ryan, the shit London Guinness guy, hits on in an interview he gave. You would never get a lager drinker commenting on the standard of a bartender's pour. Like, when would that even happen? But Ireland has a certain draw to those who no longer live in it. We're proud that we get to be Irish. And that only becomes important to a lot of people when you leave. And that's when little things like pints really feel like they mean so much more. There's social science behind linking Guinness to our memories. When people outside of Ireland who were Irish are given a free word association exercise to come up with words to describe Guinness, after all the stuff that literally describes Guinness, such as maybe cold or black or beer, the first word, the kind of more nebulous words, the first one they come to is always home. That's huge. That's hugely powerful. And I think these old men are, again, characters of this. They're almost like guardians. If you picture the story of Guinness, it's quite a difficult drink to get into. When you start drinking it, it tastes like fucking shite. These old men are like guides in a way on the hero's journey. They show you why drinking Guinness is important. It links you to a heritage. It's an in-group, very powerful, and they also provide you almost advice, guide you on the way. It's a bit like Gandalf, except if Gandalf held up his trousers with baler's twine, inexplicably a can of WD-40 on him. So Guinness is linked to these old men, and these old men are linked to history, to heritage, to Ireland. But, well, let's kind of investigate this a little bit more. Yes, old men do have stores of knowledge that can be lost, but they also can have not a lot of know-how or knowledge, or they could just be sad alcoholic cranks. Are we really giving them full humanity when we looked at them all twinkly-eyed? The fact is, it's a stereotype. And it's not even a new stereotype. Patrick Kavanagh wrote about this in his biggest epic poem, The Great Hunger. It's more about a hunger for, like, love and passion and a meaning in life rather than hunger for spuds. He writes about people in pubs, about these old men, about how they just kind of bullshit a bit. This was their university. Maguire was an undergraduate. The students were all savants by the time of pub close. The whole pub is attacking the idea of a rural utopia, and deconstructing the narrative that a life in a natural world is somehow more pure or more meaningful. Kavanagh is the world's biggest hater, but he is deconstructing this when he views a farmer kind of almost as he is. Someone who's stuck to the land, who has to toil in it, and maybe doesn't get full humanity because he isn't viewed that way. Sorry, this has all gone a bit abstract. We're talking about pints now. If we examine this narrative that Guinness is tied to old men, and that drinking Guinness, you tie yourself to Irishness, and therefore thinking about Guinness a lot and drinking a lot of Guinness makes you more Irish, we should really take a little bit of history into perspective. What's the context around this more broadly than just what we experience right now? Because something that you experience right now might have the appearance of being eternal and global, but the reality is often a bit different. I need to finish this because I have another drink coming. When we say that Guinness is universal, or if we say it's universally Irish, we have to interrogate that. There's two ways one can see if something is universal. Is it like this everywhere, or has it always been like this? Let's look across the globe, and let's look into the past and see just how universal the Irish Guinness myth is. Firstly, across the globe, Nigeria has become the second largest drinkers of Guinness, behind the UK. Yes, Ireland, number 3 on that list. And this right here is Nigerian Guinness. Beautiful. Foreign extra stout. Very similar to the West Indies porter that Arthur Guinness II brewed, that made Guinness an international powerhouse. Guinness still is an international powerhouse. It's now owned by a company called Diageo. It was a formation of Guinness PLC and Grand Metropolitan, a fancy hotel chain that owned boutique hotels, catering, and Burger King? It owned Burger King. When they formed, those two companies formed, they created Diageo. Dia meaning like day and Geo meaning earth. It's very, very clever. That made them the 7th largest food and beverage company in the world, just behind McDonald's. Burger King, McDonald's, I don't know, this is gonna make me so hungry. In the original take of this, it was my first time trying Nigerian Guinness. I've already had it now, so it's not going to be new, but it is going to be delicious. Nigerian Guinness is brewed at a higher percent, 7.5. It's brewed extra hoppy, in tradition of the West Indies porter, and it uses sour gum instead of barley, which is fascinating. Even the drink Guinness changes from country to country, because Nigeria, it's not the only place. Jamaica, Singapore, all have thriving Guinness cultures. Jamaica likes to make these kind of Guinness punches out of the naturally sweet flavor that this has. But Nigeria, why is it popular in Nigeria? There was a man called Alan Lennox Boyd, young chappie who was on the Conservative government. He was the minister over the colonies. He oversaw a decolonization period in the British Empire. He correctly asserted that former colonies are going to want to build up their own industry and be less reliant on their former colonial overlords. As such, he, once he was finished with that old gig with the government, hopped back to the family business, Guinness. He correctly figured out that building a Guinness brewing factory in Nigeria would mean that it would become a Nigerian brand. And he was absolutely correct. The Nigerian government fully welcomed this because it offered an industry, it offered jobs, and it was a international company. And Guinness made a ton of money and continues to today because of this. It's delicious. It's really nice. It has a sweetness and a punch that Guinness Draft doesn't have. Perhaps the best Guinness in the world is outside of the Old Man Pub in Sligo. Perhaps it is being brewed and drank in Nigeria. It is really nice. There's a word that comes to mind when you drink this that doesn't when you drink normal Guinness, and that's power, strength, oomph. This shit kicks your fucking mind off. It is so sweet. It is so tart, and it's so alcoholic that it's kind of just a completely different drink. I feel like if you gave that to your granddad sitting at the pub, he'd be knocked off the stool, alright? He'd be fucking, they'd talk about it in the sermon next week in Mass. This drink is strong, and that is what Guinness is associated with in Nigeria. It still has the branding of Guinness is good for you, which was taken from Ireland, but they also say Guinness gives you strength. It has a completely different image. There's a action hero that's associated with Guinness called Michael Power. There's advertisements of him heroically saving the day at a sports running competition.
This will be the halfway point.
Watch me. Look at me.
Sorry.
John, I've got Emma. Now show the world what you're made of.
And John is the world champion.
Fucking add a little fucking cartoon of him like shooting down some bad guys. And there's another advertisement of a older brother who goes out into the world, and the younger brother dreams of him and looks on fondly, and the older brother comes back, puts his arm around the young brother, gives him a little push, and goes like, it's time for you to become a man too.
A boy dreams, but a man does. Brother.
They drink their Guinness out of bottles. There's no fancy, it has to be poured the exact correct way over there. No. They're drinking it out of bottles. They're chatting with their mates. They're pushing their boys around. It is young. It is young male bravado and power and strength. It's completely different to the narrative that we tell ourselves. What I'm saying is that Guinness is not associated with Ireland and Nigeria. To be like this great Irish drink emblematic of our identity, it falls flat in many parts of the world. And why shouldn't Guinness be Nigerian? Again, it's been brewed there for 60 odd years. It's the second highest buyer of Guinness. They have their own Guinness culture, and that's, kind of freaking cool. So maybe Guinness isn't quintessentially Irish when you look space-wise across the globe, but maybe time-wise, heritage. It says 1759 on the glass. Perhaps we have this claim towards inherent Irishness because of the time that Guinness has been Irish. Well, yes, Guinness has always been Irish, but it's been Anglo-Irish. Look, Ireland was part of Great Britain. This is not news to anyone. This means that Arthur Guinness and Guinness, his company, they're British companies just as much as they're Irish companies because of what Ireland was at the time. There's kind of a bigger claim for it to be a British company. It certainly supplied the British troops, and it benefited hugely from the British Empire expanding. Wherever the British army went, their favourite drink was soon to follow. You could almost say that of the vast riches that the British Empire acquired, Guinness was just there to skim a little bit off the top. And accruing this vast wealth, the Guinness family became quite important. They became very important businessmen, and they dabbled in politics. And when those politics referred to Ireland, more often than not, they lead towards unionism, the belief that Ireland is better off included with Great Britain. Why would they risk putting themselves inside a new, unstable country when they could side themselves with the Empire, something that they always were a part of? Let's look at Edward Cecil Guinness. Lord Ive. He was in charge of Guinness from the late 1800s. He managed to become the richest person in Ireland and one of the richest people in the world. He was the old version of Bill Gates. He did like philanthropy. He brought in social housing. He cleared out the slums, whatever you want to think of that phrase. That is a thing that he was involved in. Politically, he was a unionist. He was on the Irish Unionist Alliance. He sat on the Irish Convention, which was an attempt by the government to kind of figure it out. What do we do with all these Irish people now? How do we solve the Irish question? It's never good. It's never good when you're a question. Even as late as 1982, Guinness was hesitant to be connected with Ireland. Edward Guinness, head of PR for the brewery, wished specifically to distance the company from Irishness. In a meeting at the Irish Embassy in London, he said that Guinness was encountering a lot of resistance to the Irish angle. That this could force them to emphasize the facts, such as that Guinness was an English company. The people who own Guinness, their heritage, they were dreaming of a very different ideal Ireland than, say, the proud Irish Guinness drinker today would be dreaming of. Diageo are never going to come in and say, oh yeah, we were definitely like this. They're clever about their branding. They love to say that Arthur Guinness was an Irish businessman, and that is true. But the rest, you know. It is what it is. But this leaves us with the question of this old man, great Irish identity that we have with Guinness. If it's not true globally, with the existence of Nigerian Guinness, Jamaican Guinness, and all sorts, and it's not true in time with the people owning Guinness and Guinness being associated with unionism, why do we do it? Oops. Sherlock, here you go. Out. Take one if you want, alright? Guinness is part of my memories. There's nothing I can do to change that. I have a very early memory of being a toddler and my dad raising the cream of a Guinness to my little baby face and me reacting in disgust. I remember graduating to Guinness on my Leaving Cert graduation, starting off drinking sickly sweet drinks, then moving on to Bulmers, then to beers, and finally, Guinness, something I could call my own. Many people have similar memories. Guinness is a part of Irish daily life, and it will continue to be. It's ubiquitous, but let's not forget, it is a ginormous company, and it engages in shenanigans with its taxes, according to The Guardian, of course. Look, it's a giant corporation that we in Ireland interpret as our own little thing. I do love Guinness. I do like drinking it. I do like thinking about it, and I like talking about it to anyone who will listen, yourself included. At the end of the day, when I think of Guinness, I think of an old man pub where myself and my friends are in the back corner just having a chat. I think of becoming more confident in myself, of knowing who my friends are, and of feeling home, whatever that means. What if the world was different? What if Guinness hadn't completely crushed the competition in Ireland? What if every little town and village had its own brewery, its own diversity? I'm not saying my life would be completely different if there was a microbrew from Delvin, but it's something worth thinking about. When something's ubiquitous, should we celebrate it, or should we question why it is so? I think of the canals. I think of something that also brought me peace and joy when I lived in Ireland, walking there. But now I do think of the men who lost their lives in service of it. The complications and contradictions are what makes us Irish. There's no getting around that. And when I think of that pub, it was the friends that mattered. The pint was only the pint. Thanks for watching.